Hey everybody, I'm going to run through a quick demo of a tool I made in Mel for speeding up initial material layout work in Maya. So let's dive in. So once you've installed QuickShader, you can access it by running the command QuickShader UI. And this will bring up your UI, basic UI here. You can also create yourself a little icon here that runs the same command. So once it's open, you'll have access to these main three buttons here, and you can use them add materials. You're prompted to choose a color and a name. So let's go elemental and make fire, earth, and water. Cool. So once you have these populated, you now have access to these three materials. So once you start having some objects in your scene, you can use this button to assign the material to each object. Right. So the next three buttons here will control how your materials react to light. So if we use this one, we'll get a blend, which as you can see tightens up the highlight and makes it more metallic and more reflective. This will also be really useful for when you have more complex geometry. It'll show you where you have pinching, quite obviously. Then the next one along is diffuse, and you can see it makes the surface more diffuse, less metallic, less reflective. And lastly, you have self-shading or self-illuminating, where you can see it'll make the material appear to glow. Great. The next button along will rename the material shader group. Since this is a tool for previs or for the games pipeline, it's not really a tool for making complex materials, and instead it's more of a handoff tool. So other software like Substance Painter or Keyshot, they populate their materials based on your shader group name, not your material name. So if we go to Fire and we name the shader group like Fireball, and then I like to do _SG for shader group, you can see if we go into the attribute editor and go along into the shader group node, it's indeed renamed it Fireball. So this is a process you probably want to do right at the end before you hand off this material or before you export it, this object, sorry, because I wanted to keep the UI clean, so it won't actually show you here if you've renamed the shader group or not. You would have to access it at the end, again, just for clarity, so you don't wind up with a whole load of extra menus. Right, then the next button along will select based on material names. So if you go into more complex scenes where you have a whole bunch of objects, it gets really tedious to go along and select them all. And if your grouping in your outline are based, it doesn't always necessarily, you won't always group based on material. So using this, it'll select everything in the scene that has that material assignment, nice and quick. And then lastly, we have the delete material button. So once we fire this up, it'll delete the material and then repopulate your shader with all the existing materials. So as you can see, we've picked up Lambert 1. There you go. We can delete earth, we can delete water, and then we can assign Lambert 1, and now we're back to basic Maya. Right, so I'm going to open up a other scene I've been working on that has material assignments already, and you can see if we fire up QuickShader again, we can now use the find command, and it'll populate our UI with all the existing materials in the scene. Now, it'll ignore V-Ray materials, it'll ignore Arnold materials, it'll only find basic Maya materials so that it'll work with, it won't rely on what plugins you have. Again, it's just for basic assignment for other software more than for rendering. And as you can see, they're all hooked up, so we can select based on material, we can change how they react to light, we can make this one more metallic, and if we go into here, we can see that I have renamed all the materials here, so they have their shader group names. So if we were to open this object in something like Substance Painter, like we have here, all these names have been inherited from Maya. Right, lastly, we have the help icon here, which gives you a brief rundown of the same things I've been saying, a couple of useful tips for what to do, how to use the script. And there you go. That's it. Cool. I hope this helps speed along your initial material work for your future projects. And enjoy. Bye-bye now.